Friday episode of the Donovan Bandits, and I am back. It is me, Orrin Phillips, and if it's Friday, we should have some fun. And nobody's a lot more fun than Mr. Phil Yeh. Phil is back with us. He has a new project out there. Make sure you guys go check it out. He is one of the most interesting people in comics. I mean, he's outside the mainstream, but folks just love him. They respect his art. They respect his creativity. And how could you not? I mean, it's just, it flows and flows out of him. You can tell how passionate he is about this. So here we go with Phil. Very happy to have Phil Yeh back here with us. Sir, how are you?
I'm fine. Good.
So let's talk about, you have a new project coming out. You're working on it. What's this all about?
Well, this is a new Frank the Unicorn graphic novel. It was supposed to be out in the summer, but I think it'll be out in the fall.
Okay.
So in time for my 70th birthday in October.
Not a bad thing. Now, when you're coming up with ideas for a book, where do you start?
All over the place. I actually start, they're like little chapters, but I'm working really strangely these days. So I start one chapter and I write 3 or 4 pages, and then I get an idea for another chapter, totally different, and I start that and I work on a couple of pages. Then I get another idea. So I've got about 10 different chapters starting at different times, but it all makes sense, I suppose. Somebody looking over my shoulder would probably say, "What are you doing?" But um, anyway, hopefully it all makes sense because none of it's written down anywhere. They're just fragments. I'm just working straight with ink and paper, so there's no penciling, and it's very freeing.
Mhm.
And so this is how I used to work 1978 when I did Godiva,
Mhm.
graphic novel I did that was very stream of consciousness, very loose, and well before its time. But looking back on it now, I look at that book and I think, hey, this is pretty good. So, you know, you never know. You just do it.
What's the moment that hit you to say, okay, it's time to start a new book? Was it something that inspired you to put it down on paper, or is it just something
Um,
that came naturally?
Frank the Unicorn is my wife's favorite character, and she asked me, uh, "Why don't you do a new Frank book?" So I started thinking about it, and I'm doing it for her, but also for my grandchildren because I want to leave something behind.
Most definitely. Now, when you're doing this, is it do you the the art and the story go together, or do you write the story first, then go back and put the
No,
art?
I don't write anything down,
Okay.
so I have no idea where it's going. But that's how I've always worked. I want to keep it really fresh, really spontaneous,
Mhm.
and really strange. So it's boxed me into some corners because it also takes place over the centuries
Okay.
because Frank the Unicorn is immortal.
Mhm.
So one chapter may start in Paris in the 1700s, and another chapter is in the future, another planet 5,000 years ahead of time. But the only constant is Frank the Unicorn, but it's okay.
Now, when you're doing that, I mean, do you sort of inspire yourself? Like you have an idea to go one place, and then suddenly it's like, oh, but he could do this, this, and this, and just got to go from there.
Yeah, the story just takes a life of its own. I start off with panel, I start writing something, and then I start thinking, oh, this is interesting. So in the one chapter, the sun on this planet, Frank is visiting another planet,
Mhm.
And he suddenly the woman says to him, "Oh, Wednesdays we don't have the sun. The Wednesday on Wednesday they loan their son to another planet." So that's presenting me with some interesting thoughts. But then I started thinking about what if that really happened? Like, planets need sun, supposedly, to have life. So it started opening up a whole new series of thoughts. So it's really intriguing. I haven't figured out exactly how, you know, they move the planet, but every Wednesday they move their sun away for a 24-hour period so the other planet can have some sunlight for once a week.
Now, when you're working stream of consciousness like that, how do you know when the book comes to an end? Like, what tells you, okay, this is the end point for it?
Um, that's interesting. I think I know it's at the end,
Mhm.
but this is not this book is far from being over. So it's also the artwork's very detailed, and I'm I think I'm doing it so detailed because I'm really trying to inspire a younger generation to put a little more detail in the work because I see a lot of new comics and I go to comic festivals and so forth. And what I see is there's a lack of backgrounds, a
Mhm.
lack of drawing, actually. So when I think, I you make it simple, so you make it so people can understand, but at the same time you put in some detail. I don't want to name names like Rob Liefeld or somebody, but you can have too much too much going on, but at the same time, you know, I'm mentioning him because there was a kid in Virginia. I was doing a signing, and he was excited about Rob's work, and I had never seen it
Mhm.
because I don't read comics.
Mhm.
So I said, "Well, show it to me. Bring me some samples."
Mhm.
So he brought me it, and I looked at it. I thought, "Wow, this is really busy." And I thought, busy's okay, but you want to have some clarity. And I think sometimes when I try to watch a Marvel superhero movie for 10 minutes, I think there's so many characters in the scene and so many villains in the scene, you just lose like what's going on here. So I turn it off because it doesn't really interest me.
Mhm.
And I know it interests a lot of comic fans, but I think at the same time, there has to be some clarity and there has to be some quiet moments. And I know that in most superhero movies, at least the ones I've seen, um, there isn't that clarity. But then there is Wonder Woman. The Wonder Woman series was great.
Mhm.
So there are good, you know, occasionally good superhero movies. Occasionally, rarely. But anyway, I'm talking to a comic book crowd, but I think, we have to. I think it's okay. I have a friend who only likes the comic books of our youth. I'm 70 this year, and in the 60s, we had there was more clarity. I didn't read comic books, so I caught up with it later on when I looked at them in the early 70s. But I quickly turned to underground comics, and it's funny because underground comics, some of it has no clarity. So it's it's just a matter of, there's good and there's bad in everything. Arthur Adams is a good artist. There are good comic book artists that are really original.
Mhm.
And but of course I like Alex Nino. So
Mhm.
Alex Nino, speaking of clarity, can be very unclear, but his drawing is wonderful. So, you know, so I'm contradicting myself, which is good.
How hard a critic are you on your own work, though?
I'm not critical at all
Oh,
because um, I don't look at my work and think this is good, this is bad. I just draw it and it feels right. And I very rarely ever use whiteout or correction fluid or because I think you feel it's right, and I think that's the way most artists are after they get good at what they're doing.
mhm.
They just it flows out of them. So at my age, I've been working for a long time and doing this for a long time, and I have the freedom to. And that's another thing. I mean, most comic book artists who work for another company have to follow a script. Luckily, I don't have that problem because I don't follow instructions very well. So it's good. I never worked for anyone else, and that's good or bad, whatever people think. But I don't care.
No, and that leads right into the question I was going to ask of could you ever see yourself working for someone else where there are more cooks in the kitchen and there's more timelines and stuff, or that just wouldn't work for your process?
No, no, I I once I won a contest when I was 14 years old. My friend Shane Noguchi read comics, and
Mhm.
he had me enter this contest. And I entered, and another guy drew it. Henry Boltonoff
Mhm.
drew the sketch or idea, whatever I sent in. But I got a check for $5 from National Periodical Publications. And when you're 14 years old, you think, wow, this is pretty good. And my friend was really excited. He was one who encouraged me to go to San Diego the next year, 15. And I had no interest in comic books whatsoever. But I knew who Jack Kirby was because he had comic books in his house. And I looked at them occasionally when I wasn't playing poker. So I I knew comic books and I had the check from National Periodical Publications. And I thought, I don't want to work for anybody. It was like it was a taste of and I have a lot of friends in the industry. Alfredo Alcala was my best friend.
Mhm.
And I remember Alfredo had so many assignments from so many different companies. And I think it's like being on the treadmill, being constantly on a treadmill. And I thought, wow, that's terrible. Whereas most people would think, that's great. He's working on Batman, the Hulk, and Conan or whatever. And I think, well, it's good if you want money coming in, but it's not good for me. But so
Because your art is so detailed and so beautiful and so original, are there points that you can look back on in your career and say this is sort of, a an evolutionary point for me? Like, okay, I started to do this and it really worked for me, so I started doing this, this, and this.
yeah, I think early on I was all over the boards
Mhm.
on my style. And I remember being at the first San Diego Comic Convention,
Mhm.
and I was trying to do a Rob Liefeld,
Mhm.
sort of, I was doing this really detailed, intricate work, battle scenes, a big battle scene. And I made t-shirts or posters or something with it the next year when I had a table in 71. And I gave a t-shirt I did to Jack Kirby.
Mhm.
And I met him in 1970. I thought he must be a really big guy in my mind. And the next year, I brought an extra large T-shirt to Jack, and I gave it to him. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I can use this as a bedspread." And I thought, "Wow, that's." But that really struck me that I wasn't paying attention to anything. I was listening to his words, but I wasn't really looking
Mhm.
at him. And then I started paying attention to, you know, and I always look at these guys and I would watch their attitudes
Mhm.
when they talk to fans. And I thought, this Jack Kirby guy is really nice. He's a really nice guy. He's really genuine. And when I asked him about being a comic book artist because of Shane, he just said, I said, what college should I go to in 1970? And Jack said, there's no college for comic book artists. Just do it. And so I started my own company 3 months later. And I really believe that, it's if you want to draw, and then you'll find your way. And I found my way very quickly. I was doing these battle scenes, and I thought, I don't really like drawing these battle scenes. I don't really like violence. I came from a neighborhood that was peppered with violence, and I thought, you know, I don't want to do violence. So I don't draw anything that's violent, but at the same time, I watch detective movie, TV shows and gun battles every second. But I don't know, it's weird. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't really read science fiction.
Mhm.
Harlan Ellison had me on his show once on a radio program. He was co-hosted. Well, he was hosting because our friend Mike Hodell passed away
Mhm.
suddenly, and Harlan took over, and Harlan had me as a guest, and I went to the show with all my cartoonists on uh, my group, Cartoonists Across America, and we brought humor, we brought cutouts, we brought all this stuff, and Harlan threw it all out and threw them out, and said, it sat next to me at a very small table, and he said, "We're going to keep this really serious, Phil. It's about literacy." And I thought, oh, great. Nothing like having a conversation with Harlan that's serious. But I thought about that, and I thought, okay, that's all right. It's everyone has their place. But then he's an engineer said, Phil doesn't even read science fiction. Well, I don't read comic books either, and I draw them. So what? But Harlan just said, "Be quiet," to the guy, and continue talking. So I think it's. I think I'm immersed in writing and drawing, and I draw fantasy or whatever. I draw science fiction,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I don't really read it, and I don't. It makes sense to me because I'm getting my inspiration from my head,
Gotcha.
from out of outer space,
Mhm.
as Mobius used to say, or many other friends of mine would say. It's coming from the cosmos, and so that's why it doesn't make any sense. People say, "Well, where is this coming from?" I don't know. Nobody knows. Well,
I'm curious your thoughts on AI art because it's becoming sort of a hot button issue in not only the comic community but the art community. What are your thoughts on it?
well. I don't pay any attention to anything that, I mean, everyone is arguing about AI, and I appreciate,
Mhm.
you know, I think personally, I believe in, and I know a lot of my friends don't agree with me. Um, I draw with a old-fashioned pen and ink. I draw with a brush. I paint with a brush. I paper, pen and ink, the old-fashioned stuff. So when you're talking about tablets or AI or anything, um, personally, I I think that I haven't seen anything really good. I've seen a lot of recreations from people taking other people's art
Right.
and making sort of their own art, supposedly, but it doesn't look genuine. It doesn't have the heart and soul. And so, but it's a shame, it's a shame with deep fakes, with the politicians. I mean, we're ending up in a world that is very, very strange and very sad and very, you know, I could say I wish everyone on the planet would be aware, but I know that 90% of the people, probably more, are unaware. And they just, oh, this is on the computer. This is real. This is, this happened or this didn't happen.
Mhm.
And so it's very scary stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but, I'm a Taoist,
Mhm.
which is a philosophy that basically says, let go, be like water. And I like to say that the age of this insanity, what I call insanity,
Mhm.
will pass. But, that's my opinion.
Right.
I think it's like turn of this century, 2000. I figure, okay, maybe 30, 40 years, and then we come to our senses. At the present time, it doesn't look like it.
Right.
There's a lot of wars going on. There's a lot of problems, a lot of repetition, a lot of things that happened in the past that, I nobody, people are thinking, how in the world could this happen again? But it happens, and history repeats itself because we don't learn from history, which is the problem.
Mhm.
Which all good comic books, by the way, allude to this.
Mhm.
Ray Bradbury's writings alluded to this. Jack Kirby, in his creations of so many things, alluded to this. And I think at the best, um, we can look at the really good stuff that's out there that says, okay, we have a problem. There's a problem. Charles Schultz was a friend of mine, and Charles Schultz, in very simple language and very simple comic strips, said a lot of stuff that really captured the mood.
Yeah. I want to know when you create something, whose opinion matters the most to you about their thoughts on it?
Nobody.
Okay.
My wife will agree with that. He'll say, I don't understand this. This is so weird. And I say, well, that's what I did. It's like I don't I don't work for anyone's approval. I don't work to sell it. I don't work to, if people like it, if they buy it, if somebody likes something I did,
Mhm.
that's great. But if they don't, that's fine too. Because I think an artist, a real artist, just does it. And so I get up every day and I draw or I paint. And I don't do it for accolades. I put on I had my wife put it on Facebook because I don't have computers work. But I think what I do is I just do it. It's part of me. And it's a sickness. It's really a sickness because I think all artists, if you're an artist, you have this need to create, to get it out. And I don't know. Maybe I often think, well, maybe I should stop. But then what would I do? I don't do anything else. So this is weird, but I can do other things. I garden sometimes, but
Right.
you know, I don't know.
Well, you just said that, th- th- right now you're happy with it being out there and stuff like that. But to begin with, there was a hustle that came with trying to get the books out in front of people to get people knowledgeable about the
Oh
books.
yeah,
What was that
yeah.
like, and how? Because I mean, you're really like sort of the king of independent comics. How did you get the word out about what you were doing? And a lot of times in a pre-internet age.
Yeah. Even now, because I don't really know how to work the internet, but I think I just hustled. I was a street kid,
Mhm.
so I hustled everything from selling greeting cards, selling candy because kids would buy candy at the liquor store. So
Mhm.
I got a wagon, filled it with candy that my friend's father owned two liquor stores.
Mhm.
I bought it wholesale, and I had another kid pull the wagon around, and we sold candy, the same price, but we brought it to the customer. So yeah, well, my first graphic novels were entirely Bud Plant and Phil Sewling. Um, I don't think without those guys, I really would have gotten the jump start that I did, because in '77, first of all, I did a graphic novel, Even Casco Gets the Blues, $5 cover price. It
Mhm.
was outrageous. The comic books were 35 cents or something. So here I am, black and white, oversized. It was 8.5 by 11. So it didn't fit in the spinner rack. I had all these problems, all these things I didn't think about. And but Bud Plant took half the run. I printed 1,000. And Phil Sewling took the other half. So I was golden. I sold them. And so I thought, well, I'll do another one. And I did another totally different graphic novel. And that was Godiva. And that was even weirder and totally stream of consciousness, and didn't really make any sense to a lot of people. But I think what I set in motion for myself was I just do them. And Bud and Phil Sewling were buying pretty much the whole print run. So I was, printing 1,000. So we got going, and by probably 1980, I was printing a lot more than 1,000. And I think what really happened, Rick Veitch was telling me to do black and white. My comics were black and white, to do a comic book when the Ninja Turtles, came out, and there was this mad rush to do a black and white comic book. And I told Rick, and I thought about it. I thought, if I do a comic book, I'm not gonna. I could see the writing on the wall. They print 50,000 number ones, 20,000 number twos, 10,000 number three. Negative 5,000 number four. So I thought, this is crazy. This is nobody else. Can anybody else see this? So I thought, I'll print 50,000 books, and I'll print 50,000 books in number two and 50,000 number three, because I'll figure out my own distribution system, which we did. And That's it. It's like, like when I was selling comics, candy on the street of Los Angeles, I was thinking, how can I bring my books directly to the people? And I figured out my method was I got the shopping malls around America to have me come into their town, paint a mural, and we give away the books at the malls. And we give away thousands of books at the malls. And the malls will pay me to do this. They'll pay me a lot of money. And until they stopped, and 20 years later, they said, well, why are we paying Phil? She charged me. And I said, well, that's it. We're done. So, I thought, why would I pay them to come into their mall? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But that's okay. They 20 years it worked.
Mhm.
And we established quite an audience for our comics because we were giving away like 50,000 books a month, and I was doing 4 or 5 different titles.
Mhm.
So, this is I can reveal these secrets now because at the time I didn't say anything because I thought, oh, all the comic industry is going to steal my idea. But the comic industry doesn't think about the greater audience.
Mhm.
The comic book industry thinks about comic book fans. I don't think about comic book fans. I think about real people. So when I go out to real people and give them a comic book, they probably never saw a comic book. And that's really true. But a lot of people write to me letters, not a lot, but 2 or 3 a year. But they'll say, wow, I really like the comic book. And I get letters from people. When I was a kid, I read Frank the Unicorn. I'm 35 now, and it was really good. And I think, well, it's kind of like I look at these emails or these letters, and I think, is this for real? This guy, yeah. But yeah, I've met some of these people, and I have to say that it's worth it.
I was about to say because you impacted so many people with your art, with the murals or the comics and stuff. I mean, do you ever step back and think about the ripple effect that you've had on so many people with what you've done?
I don't really think about it, but it's brought to my attention. We have a girl working with me, a young woman. She's Emily Mata. She's 20 years old now. She's a college student. She's painting with me down at McDonald's, at the first McDonald's.
Mhm.
And she met me when she was 13, 12 years old or something. I did a TED Talk in Paris, California, and she heard my talk and she asked me for my email. And she periodically, like twice a year, whatever, 3 times a year, she sent me a question. And we kept up a correspondence. And as she got 16, 17, 18, I met her again. I met her a couple years ago, a year ago, and now she's published in her school newspaper a couple weeks ago, and she's really good. And this is really great. She has her own character, Mira, but this is really unbelievable to me. She came up with a bookworm promoting literacy named Dewey. And that's a strip that runs in the paper, full color, in Riverside. What? UC Riverside. UC Riverside. And UC Riverside, by the way, has one of the largest collections of science fiction in the world. And it's uncanny, how, I'm not taking any really credit for this, but Yeah, it's nice. It's like, wow, because I wasn't there along the way when she was drawing and coming up, but she always liked art, and I always encourage her, keep doing it, just. And I always encourage a lot of people because I believe everybody, everybody, no matter what age you are,
Mhm.
6 years old, 75 years old, you can draw. Everyone can draw. And I'm tired of people telling me, oh, I can't draw. What my favorite analogy is, I say, when you were five, you ate cookies. You like cookies. And then you're seven, you say, I can't, you like to draw. When you're five, you draw with crayons. You do draw anything.
Mhm.
Well, then when you're 10 years old or whatever, you say, well, I still eat cookies, but I can't draw. I don't draw. And I think, why? Why not? And now I really contemplated this video games
Mhm.
sensation because kids today are, so many of them are just playing video games. And I won't name names like my own grandsons, but you know, I have personal experience with this, and I think, okay, it's very dangerous
Mhm.
to me. I think, wow, you're taking away time that you could be doing other things. So I'm trying to subtly, or not so subtly, you know, get the kids to go outside or do something. And I who knows? You have kids, so you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I'm right there with you because I mean, you guys are so gracious to send those comics, and my kids loved them, but I'm constantly fighting the iPads, and we
Yeah,
give them some time, but there's content on there and stuff. But my daughter loves to draw, and when she does, I make a big deal out of it, like, oh, let's do stuff
yeah.
together, let's read together. But it seems like you said, this generation, the creativity has changed a lot, and they just don't seem to want to put the time in to their hobbies and stuff.
Well, what it is short attention spans.
Mhm.
They really they've tested this. The I hear on the news or on talk shows that I have on during the morning, they're testing all these theories. I don't think it takes a genius to figure out these kids, they don't have attention spans.
Mhm.
And they TikTok or whatever it's called, they say it's like 30 seconds or 2 minutes. They look at a TikTok, thing, and then they're done. And you think, okay, well, you know, I guess that's good, but at the same time, they can't sit down and even watch a movie or read a book, which I'm encouraging more kids to consider reading a book.
Mhm.
But um, you know, I I know I'm fighting a lost cause because my wife was working in a library, and I go down there. She still volunteers with the library, and it's really sad. There's so many good books. And I was in a bookstore. Our friend owns a bookstore, a local independent bookstore, which is only open whenever she feels like it, whatever. But it's really great because I was saying to her yesterday, when you go on Amazon to buy a book,
Mhm.
you buy a specific book.
Mhm.
Okay, that's fine. But here's the thing about a bookstore. You go into the bookstore, you're looking for a specific book, especially a used bookstore. They don't even have the book, but you've suddenly found 1,000 other books. And you never heard of. You say, well, what's this about? What's this about? Well, that's curiosity.
Mhm.
And that is really lacking
Yeah.
in American culture, is like, where's the curiosity? Well, this is what's happening to independent bookstores. They're dying. And the ones that stay alive,
Mhm.
I'm supporting, and hopefully I can still do signings here and there, but it's really sad. It's just like this is not okay. It's
Right.
not okay that complete cities just have a chain bookstore if they have that. And the chain bookstores are fine, but they don't carry the really obscure stuff, which is really the good stuff. A
Mhm.
lot of times the best sellers are fine, but you know, that's all I have to say. They're what gets me is TV has all these authors, supposedly authors who've done children's books. They're all celebrities,
Right.
and they've all done children's books. And I think, well, this is weird. We don't have any authors who actually are just authors or artists. We have to be an actor. It's like, So I thought when I was young, I dabbled in radio, I dabbled a little bit in filmmaking, and I thought, yeah, this isn't for me. I was successful in comedy
Mhm.
in my radio program, but
Mhm.
I thought, yeah, I would rather
Right.
just draw my jokes and draw my situations. And who, is this is the whole thing about a culture that celebrates only people that are famous because they're on TV.
Mhm.
That's very sad,
Yeah.
very sad. So that's my diatribe on
No,
that.
I agree with you. So, with Frank the Unicorn still being worked on, do you have
Yeah.
something else in mind once Frank is done, or?
Oh yeah, I've got like 4 or 5 projects in the works. And I've always had 4 or 5 books going on at once. I'm writing the Ghost Carrot. I've got 7 pages done. I'm painting it actually,
Oh, wow.
and that's a really unique comic experience because I'm painting watercolors and then I'm inking over it. And again, it's totally weird, but it's very strange, but this character, the ghost carrot, was a kid before he died, and he became a ghost carrot, and he meets another kid, and he's telling the other kid about his life, but it's like very strange stuff. But you know, yeah, there's a lot of I've got like 4 or 5 books in the works, and I have to get a few of them out because I realize I haven't published anything new since 2020. So this year I have to put out at least one book. Used to be at least one book a year,
There
but
you go. So that was Phil. He is keeps on chugging along. He's got more and more projects coming out, and we are all excited about it. It's really, touching him talking about his friend who passed, and of course, our condolences to his family. But Phil's a wonderful guy. I'm sure we're gonna have him back because he's done it and he's seen it all in comics. He knows everybody in comics outside of comics. We've watched previous episodes. He's mentioned George Lucas, he knows. It's mind blowing. He's a mind blowing guy. So, Phil, thank you so much for taking the time. And, guys, I've been saying it for a while now, and I'll say it one more time. Please go to cbcawards.org. In the first few categories, you'll see Dollar Bandits. Please vote for us. It takes only a couple seconds to fill it out. It would mean the world to us if we can win this. It would be absolutely huge. And please vote for the wonderful podcasts and YouTube channels out there. They're doing great stuff, and it's really enriching the whole comic community. So have a wonderful Friday, and we will see you next week.